I formed a company in 1995, so that's 30 years ago this year. And we were actually the first green energy company in the world. You couldn't buy green electricity anywhere. Nobody sold it. Nobody heard of it. And I didn't know that at the time. And it, again, was kind of circumstantial. I was on the cusp of building my first windmill on this hill outside Stratford. It took 5 years of battles with planners, grid companies, the National Trust, all kinds of people, went to the High Court, all kinds of crazy stuff. I did it all myself and learned the whole process completely. I had, in effect, a blueprint to build more windmills, and I thought, well, I should do that. But to do that, I needed a fair price for the power. Went to see the local electricity company, for want of a better way to describe them, post-liberalization and privatization. They were still monopoly buyers, and I went to them to say, do you want to buy some green energy? Because they're the only people I could sell it to. And they laughed at the idea, literally laughed at the idea, and said, here's a rubbish price, And I left the meeting thinking, well, in that case, I have to become an electricity supplier. I have to cut out the middleman to reach the end user to get a fair price to build more windmills. So April 1995, I formed what is now Ecotricity. We were called the Renewable Energy Company back then. It was a kind of joke because there were 12 energy companies post-privatization, and they were known as regional electricity companies. They had the same acronym, REC. And so I started one called the Renewable Energy Company, and we were REC. And on the energy system, you have a moniker to identify yourself in energy trading. And we chose to be REC 13, 13 being, my favorite number. So, it was just a bit of fun. But I think it was around about the end of the 90s. I was looking for a better name. The Renewable Energy Company is a bit of a mouthful. And I think I had the idea in a bath, actually. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, green is a bit overused. Remember, this is the late 90s. I was thinking green's a bit overdone. Need a better name. Came up with Ecotricity. Everybody said it was rubbish, but we did it. And hey ho, here we are.
So you were the first renewable energy company in the world, you just said.
Yes.
You knew the industry inside out. You had top to bottom.
Not at that point, not 1995. I spent a year studying it. And then in 1996, we supplied our first electricity onto the grid.
When I say industry, I mean as in the hardware. You literally built the turbine
the
yourself.
Wind energy, absolutely. Yeah.
There's very few people on the planet that would have been in that situation. I'm sure there's a few, but not many. Today, fast forward to 2025, Ecotricity has 168,000 customers. Octopus and British Gas have 12, 13 million accounts in terms of how many people they serve. Do you ever think, we had first mover advantage. I had the big idea before others realized it was even plausible. I had the technical understanding. We should be 10 times bigger than we are.
Nope, never.
Why?
Well, I didn't do it for business reasons, actually, conventional business reasons, which is to make money, be big, that kind of stuff. I did it because I thought it needed doing. I thought this new kind of energy should be in the world. I saw it as a route to building more windmills and stuff like that. It turns out we've done a lot more than that in the course of our history, more than just wind. We can talk about that later. There you go. That's my return ping. And I'm not interested in money. And I decided to use business as a method to bring change in the energy industry to begin with. Our mission widened to include transport and food. But, morals and ethics matter to us, and business has good attributes and bad ones. And I chose to leave behind the bad ones, keep the good ones, and create a different kind of company, actually. We're not for dividend. So we don't pay dividends to shareholders. All of the money we make stays in the company, goes into our mission. And, the outcome is much more important to me, or it's a different kind of outcome. It's not about size. As a catalyst, we pioneered wind energy in Britain in several instances. We did, big things first and different things first. We built Britain's first solar park, Britain's first electric car, the world's first national network of charging points for electric cars, and a whole bunch of other stuff after that. And for me, that's where the value is, to have lived a life making that kind of change. It's not about size.
So a skeptic, and I buy all of that, a skeptic would come along and they would say, you could achieve so much more if you do achieve the scale, maybe even through having dividends or whatever. And you can enact that change more quickly because, of course, in a capitalist society, money is social power, it's resources. you can influence political outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. What would you say to that?
I would say it's a lovely theory. Now show me an example of an energy company that's done more than we have.
So you think if you'd gone down that route, you would have failed on your own terms and...
Well, I think the world around us disproves that theory. There's not an energy company that you could name that's done more than we have.
But if you look at something like, and this might sound daft to start with, if you look at a company like SpaceX, and I'm mentioning that because it's a private company, right? It's not a public limited company. There's a very weird mission behind it, which is send human beings to Mars. Yes, of course, it's dependent on public contracts with NASA and various US agencies.
Huge subsidies.
Of course. But it has this weird mission, but it's achieving it through market mechanisms and clearly, besides anything else, Elon Musk is, a megalomaniac. And I wonder if, Dale Vince had a touch more Elon Musk megalomania, there's an argument maybe as a country we'd be further down the road of renewable energy, but you just don't buy that clearly.
Well, I think, I alone can't do everything that you might imagine we might already have done or the more that we could have done. But I think that the role we've played in this, in pioneering renewable energy, green energy from the get-go, and then turning it into a business argument to make the business case for green energy and for electric cars. We started the electrification of transport. There wasn't an electric car in Britain when we decided to build one, or the world. This is pre-Tesla. And I think, all of those are probably at the limit of what a person or a private company could do without political intervention or support, without the changing the rules of our economy, which has started to happen now. It started to happen a few years ago, I think, ahead of the election, with Labour turning to green policies and stuff like that. Really exciting time, great opportunity, because it came at the right time in history when green stuff suddenly was an economic argument, not a moral one. So the other thing I would say is that having shareholders that want money from a company are a kind of inhibiting factor. So I make all of the decisions, ultimately, in the end, myself. I make decisions about what we do based on what I think is the right thing to do, the best thing to do. It's not always a business case behind what we do. Sometimes it turns into one after the event. I couldn't do that if I was answerable to shareholders. And so, we've grown from, one guy on a hill in a trailer to where we are today with 800 people and, I don't know, 600 million turnover, something like that, with no external investment, and an entire series of innovations and firsts that broke the mold of things that had gone before us. I think that is unmatchable, actually.
That's kind of unique, right?
That's that word.
I'm trying to think, obviously, there are other people out there, particularly in the US, who've started massive companies with no external investment, but, that's because they've left another company with
a load of money,
$10, $20 million or whatever, whereas you were a new age traveller.
Yep.
Yeah, that is kind of unique. On the electric car point, that was called and I've written it down, the Nemesis. So when did you build that?
Started in 2008, and it was a kind of combination of things. We'd advanced our mission from just energy as the kind of single biggest source of carbon emissions in our country. Early 2000s, I went looking for the second and third biggest because I figured, right, they must exist in the world. And it was transport and food. Energy, transport and food became then our mission because 80% of all our personal carbon footprints come from those three walks of life: how we power our homes, how we travel, what we eat. And so 2008, I was a bit of a petrol head and a tree hugger. I wrote about this on my blog at the time. I wanted a better car. I wanted a car that still had performance, but it didn't burn things. Looked around for an electric car, none in the world. Decided to make one, which is a crazy idea. But we got some motors just out of R&D, some batteries just out of R&D from Korea. The real difficult part was stitching them together with the control systems, because we couldn't buy that. We had to build that. And anyway, built the Nemesis. The rationale for the Nemesis was, if we're going to build an electric car, we have to build a supercar, because the kind of stereotype of the day would be that electric car was like a milk float, if you even know what they are. Milk used to be delivered by a little electric thingy kind of stuff, or a noddy car or something like that. And what I wanted, and what I found in all of my time in this realm, is that if you're going to introduce an alternative to something, it has to be at least as good as the conventional one. So, in football, our organic pitch is regularly award-winning. It's not an organic pitch, but, The car, it had to be a fantastic car so that people didn't go, yeah, but, it still holds the land speed record in Britain right now, 15 years later, something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, so how fast was it top speed?
I think it was 150 something. So there are categories for land speed records, and in its category, it still holds the land speed record. It's in the Science Museum now. I gave it to them a few years ago.
Why the Science Museum and not Bewley?
I have no idea. I just wanted to move it on. It had sat around for a long time, and we got in touch with them and said, hey, do you want this? Because it was Britain's first electric car. And, kind of the world moved on incredibly quickly. Within 10 years, electric cars were all manufacturers were talking about. We went from none to like it being completely the future. And having that car led me to understand that there was no infrastructure to charge them, and that without that, we had this chicken and egg problem that people wouldn't buy cars with nowhere to charge. No one was going to build a charging network because there were no cars on the road. So we just jumped in and built the electric highway on motorway stations up and down the country. And the rest is history.
And that's a business you sold?
Yeah.
When did you sell that?
Oh, I want to say 2022. I'm guessing now, but I think so.
How much you sell it for?
I'm not supposed to tell you, but it's so long ago now, I don't think anybody will cry. 70 million quid.
Right.
Up until then, it only lost money. For 5 years, we gave the energy away. We didn't even charge people, and it was a part of the buzz at the time. People were buying Nissan Leafs, the only car you could buy, and they were buying them because they could charge for free, and it was like a big deal. Because when we stopped, I know this because people told me, they're like, "Oh shit, that's the reason I bought an electric car." And stuff like that. 5 years we did it for nothing. We're losing about £1 million a year for 10 years. And then these guys came along and wanted to buy it. And actually, our tech by then, our tech was really old. We had the oldest charging stuff on the road, and there were lots of competing networks by then. It needed a load of money investing in it. The technology had gone from 3 kilowatt chargers in 2011 when we started. And before we sold it, we installed a 350 kilowatt charging system in Rugby, I think it was. I mean, that's a big shift in technology. We basically had 3-pin plugs on the motorway to start with, and moving all the way to 350 kilowatts. It was a fantastic experience, actually, and rapid pace of development.
Did you ever have a Tesla?
No, God, no.
Because, of course, you had a famous Barney with Tesla.
Yeah, I did, yeah, but... even before, there might have been a world in which I'd bought a Tesla, but yeah, I think they're quite naff. But
why are they naff?
Just to look at, and I guess you can't escape the background. So for me, it was the experience of dishonesty with Tesla, the company driven by the founder, in terms of trying to steal the electric highway from us. While pretending to negotiate with us about some kind of partnership. It was an incredible experience. So I can't separate myself from that. And you can't also separate out the recent events, the Nazi salutes and all the other kind of, bollocks that's been going on and coming out of Musk's mouth, and the things he does, I think he's a bad man running a bad company, and I wouldn't buy his car.
So just for people who are listening, they know all the Nazi salute stuff and watching. They won't be familiar with this legal battle that you had with Tesla, protracted legal battle, David versus Goliath, over the charging stations.
It took about 3 years, I think, to conclude with a settlement and them paying us a load of money. But it began one Sunday evening when we received an email. When I say we, my colleague Simon, who ran the electric highway for me by then, we got this email from Tesla to Simon saying, this is what we're going to do starting tomorrow. We're going to encourage the landlords, our landlords, the motorway service operators, to break contract with us, the electric highway. We're going to start a campaign in the newspapers to undermine them as whatever it was they were going to accuse us of, I don't know. And we're working also to do the same with government. It was a 3-pronged approach to basically destroy the electric highway so that they could have our locations for their new Tesla network that they wanted to build. And up until then, we probably spent 6 months talking to them. They approached us and said, we're coming to Britain. We'd like to kind of collaborate. And then I think I was going to say big mistake, but I'm not sure it was a mistake in the end, because we had an NDA with them, non-disclosure agreement. They said, show us all your stuff, like people do, and we'll sign an NDA to say we won't misuse it. So we shared with them details of our leases with our landlords and all that kind of stuff. And that's what they misused. But like I say, it wasn't really a mistake, because the fact that that happened enabled us to get a High Court injunction. On the Monday morning, we went straight to the High Court and got an injunction for them to stop completely what they were doing, which mightily pissed them off. I think I described them and Musk as like cowboys in the press at that time. Like, it was like the Wild West. They came to us and offered us baubles, for what we had and what they wanted. And when we refused, they tried to take it by force. It was an incredible experience. But when the email landed, we thought it was a dark joke. We thought somebody's having a laugh, because these people we'd been talking to for 6 months, all nice as pie to our faces, couldn't be capable of that. It must just be a joke, but it turned out to be real. And the relevance of the name Simon is that they had a new PR guy called Simon, and they simply sent the email to the wrong Simon.
And that's how you knew.
That's how we found out what they were actually up to.
So they were looking at some kind of a takeover, which mutually beneficial. You'd make some cash.
Not a takeover, just collaboration.
Collaboration. And then they decided, we'll do a hit job on you, defame you, etc.
And it was getting closer and closer to the launch of their car in Britain, and we kept saying to ourselves, why haven't we, closed the deal? Why are we still talking about this? We were just a couple of weeks away, which seemed strange since we'd started 6 months previous. And then, of course, we understood everything. Behind the scenes, they'd been persuading our landlords to break contract. They even offered to pay their legal costs and stuff like that.
Wow.
Just breaking contract. It was at least amoral.
Do you think that's how Elon Musk does business?
I do.
That's the default.
I think it's how he lives his life, yeah.
He doesn't give a shit about other people. And
I think that's probably right.
well, that's all the evidence you got to go on. It's pretty conclusive, isn't it? Really,
it's quite damning. It's quite damning. We in the legal process, there's a thing called disclosure, where each side actually has to share all internal comms, even when they're incriminating. We got to see a whole bunch of stuff. Elon Musk saying it's not their electric highway, it's our electric highway. We're like, where does that come from? What's that even about? But that's how he saw it.